Kublaya pi ka hebaret baro badang don hapdeng ka jinghikai na ka benda ka communion Banyngkong. Katno ni dam da ka jingmen ka bakraw anya ka do biang ya pi lingba ka ne ka Jinghikai niam. Ni ngen scam ba ni kirmen scam ba pi don hapdeng ka met ka bakoi ka bakia. Kumba ha ka gospel kat kum Markus. Kalinong ka ba shipo ka dukod ka ba khatsaw ba khandrin. Ujisu ulang keduk yang kena akik sakti jo bat ulang kerkru yaki. Tetip ko habbarit ba ujisu uye yapi. Ukerkru yapi bat uyai don ringkat bat pi baharabo.
Te kena kumba mangi ratip ya ka jingmot jong kidak kishin ki bangi jule bar bor ha ka por le niam jongi. Te menta shushu ngan batai yapi shaphang ki tiar khoi. Hakabangi khot hakapareng ki sacramental articles hakibangi jupadan kam barabor hakijing le liam jongi. Kaduan kadai kajaka hakaba ulingdo uterwa ya kajingknya kane kathau ya ulum Calvary hakaba u Jesu Christ ulaterwa knya yalade halor kadiengpna. Ha ka jingknya jong ka mas bakhuj halor ka duwan la pen menta biang ya ka ne ka jingknya jong ukris jain duwan ka dei ka jain li ka bajrong bantap ya ka duwan ka banno habaro arliang jong ka duwan ya ka ne ka jain dei banda kerkhu da ulingdo shwa ban pen don kam kani ka jain duwan ka pen kan mau yangi ya ka jain ka bala Spanya ka met u Jesu habala bu hapo ajinta kading phna ru ka don barabor ibarit halor duwan bat ka bahe hajan ka duwan kani ka pen I bat ka pen kan mau ba ha ka duwan la pen menta ya ka jingknya jong u Jesu Christ halor kading phna ki mombati haduwan la juthang ya ki mombati ha ka pormas bat jingmane sacrament ki mombati ba me ki pen I ya ka jingdon teli telan jong Jesu Christ ha ka jing le niam ka jingthang ya ki mombati haduwan ne ha ka dur mot jong u Jesu ne ki riu khoj ka dei ka dak ka shin jong ka jingterwa ha ublei ya ki jingduai bat ki jingthmu jongi ki sentiu hajan kaduwan la jubu ru ya ki sentiu ban pen itenat ya kaduwan namar ba kadai ka jaka ba kentang ki khna duwan ki dei ki tu ki bayarap ya ulengdo ha ka kenya ka kriam haduwan ki ne ki khna ki dei ki balayo Jinghikai bha ha ka le niam le rukom kumno banyarap ya ulengdo ka jingya jan jongki shakaduwan kadai ka jingjan jongki sha ukris ha ka eucharist bakhoi ka kasok kadai ka sopti jinsur ka ba ki brodar ki phadar ki phong barabor kane ka sopti jongki lengdo ba ki phong man la ka sngi ban pen I ba ki dai ki riuniam laju phong barabor wat ha ka por bomdon mas ne ki weipat ki jingle niam ru kumjo ustol ulengdo uwa ha urendang jong u ustul ulong gadak kashin ban pen I ya ka bor ba ulengdo udon ya ka ba la pen khamti da ublei hi lingba ka balang ha ka sngi kentang lengdo ya u ka chasable ka dei ba ki lengdo aki phong ha ka pormas ban pen I ya ka kerdan ka buram bat ka lingkor jong lengdo laju su pen itenat bahaya ka rong jong ka la ban long ka bali bastem bajrngam basaw bat bajngum katkum ka ayom jong ka balang ka chasable rongli bat rong stem laju phong ha ka ayom Christmas paskha bat ha ki wei de ki sngi buram bakraw jong ka balang ne jong ki rukhoi ka ne ka rong ka long ka dak ka shin jong ka jingmen bat jingkhoi ka chasable rong jerngam ya ka ne ka rong la ju phong ha ki sngi utrai ayom la ya bat ha ki sngi po ya Kani karong kalong kadak jong kajing kermen. Kachasabel rong sao. Laju pong hakisngi lengku snam jingyap martir jong uno uriu kuy. Hakasngi jingyap jong utrai Jesu Christ. Kata kadai kasngi thok ding bakuy. Hakasngi Pentecost. Karong sao kathau ya kading bat kasnaw. Kathau ya kajing place nam jong utrai Jesu Christ bat jong ki martir. Kachasabel rong jungum. Laju pong haka ayom adaben bat ayom len. Laju pendon kamru haka por ba penlong mas yap breu bat tep breu. Kane karong kayeng nakabenta kajing snausi kum kajing snausi ya kipop. Kamonstrans. Kadai kajakabu ya ka sakramen bukhoy haka por ba penlong jing mane sakramen bat jing kerku. Lashna itinat bahaya ka hakirukom o shrong ba isyong kun baha. Kadon kathliw ba pelon hamar pedeng ha kabala bu ya ukpu gentang. Jingbu kerku lane ka font. Kadai kajakabu kerku hakmat ying mane ni hakmat jingkhang ying mane. Ha kaba ngi kerku yalade. Ka ordo. Kadai ka kalendar niam. Tangba lashon hakadur jong kakot. Hangni kadon kilenong bat kidukot na ka Bible badai ban pule man la kasngi hakapor mas. Hangne ru lat ho ikisngi kraw kisngi burom jong kiriu kuot kijing kedaw tayaw kinombar jong kisaw. Hangne ru lat ho yakirong jong kichasubel. Kakot misal. Kadai kakot bala pendon kam hakapor le'niam kam tam haga mas bukhoy. Hakane latho ya kiriti le niam bat ya ki jingduai baro kibaya day bat ka jing le niam. Jingra din dhop lane thurable. Kadai ka jing pensieng yubi ya kaduwan dupat haka pormas por jing mane sakramen bat kiway day ki jing le niam. Kadhop. Ya kadhop lathang haka pormas bat kiway ki jing le niam ban pensieng yubi ya kaduwan ya kadieng pna ya ka sakramen bukhoy tam kaduwan ya ka sunduk med yap habale niam kadhup kadai kadak kashin jong ka ngu kademblay bat jing duai baje duwan kadai ka baje barit bajubu hajan kaduwan laju tiet ya ka hakapor bara ya ukpu bat ka khuri shajrong ban penkala shakamet bat kasnam jong uchisu kane ka jingtiet baje ka penkan mau yangi ba kadai ka por ba kong santam ha kamas bakhoy. Kakhuri wan, kadai kakhuri bu wan, ya kaba en sapen kentang ban kella syakasnam ba shisha jong u Jesu Christ. Kakhuri kpu lane siborium, kadai kakhuri bu kpu barit, ya kiba en sapen kentang ban kella long kamet ba shisha jong u Jesu Christ. Kapliang lane paten. Kadai ka kenja pliang bapelun, Sriem ya ka Paris, balashna itinat baha, ha kabala bu ya ukpu bahe lane uhus. Kapol, kadai ka jingtap khuri barben baha, la pendan kam ya kani ha kabatap ya ka khuri wan. Ki kruwet, kidai ki kenja bitorret, ha kaba ha iway na ki labu ya ka wan, bat iway na ki labu ya ka Kiban pendon kam ha ka jing kanya mas bakhoy. Kuhebarit menta hangi ngan batay ya kini ki jan khoi jan kentang ha ka ba ulindo upendon kam ha ka pormas. Ngidon ya kani ka jan ki basaw dong kum karumal. Ha ka ba ladon ya ka jing kna ka barit hapdeng. Ya kani ka jan ni khot ya ka corporal. Ya kani ka jan ulindo usiang ya ka halor kaduan. Nang tangi don ya kane ka pol kane kade ka paten hakabala bu ya uhus halor jongka ni don pat sa ka wei ka jan ka bakhamrik ban ya ka corporal ha kabala don ya ka ding na ha pedeng ya kane ka jan ni khot ya ka purificator ha ka ba ulindo upendon kam ya ka ban pen khoi ya ka khuri renkat ru ya kasiborium nang ta shu ni dan sa ka wai pat ka jan ka ba khamrit ban ya ka purificator kane ka jan ka don ru ya uding phna hakner ya kane ka jan ni khot ya ka finger towel ha ka ba ulindo upen don kam ya ka banyat ya gikti Timinta hangni ko hebbarin ngan bata ya phi ya kidak kishin kibangile ha kapor mas bakhoi kadak kading phna kadai kadak jong ka jingjok habangile ya kadak kading phna ngi kerkhu yaladi da ka jingkerkhu jong ubleyu pa ubleyu khon padu ubleyu mensiem bakhoi kadak kading phna ro kadai kadak ha kabangi ken mau ya ka jingsha shitom par ka jingyap jong ujisu na ka benta jongi halor kading phna bat ken mau ko hebba iet habangi le ya kadak kading phna ni phla yala ka jingai kristan catholic jongi kabaar ulingdo udo ya kaduan kajingdo ya kaduan da ulingdo habas dang kamas bakhoj kalong kadak jong kajing iet bat kajing burom ya ka ka bakhoj bakentang kabalai ngitiet ya ka shadem jongi lai sin habangi dua ya kajing duai panmap da ka ba ong namar kajing le palat jonga namar kajing le palat jonga namar kajing le palat bakrau jonga kani kapin I bangis ngausi shisha ya kipop kiba mangingi le bat daga jing sngorit ni panmap na ublei bangin long ki babit ban shimbenta hakamas bakhoi kabasaw ka jingle ya kadak kading phna daga tik me ha ka shilang mat ha ka shintur bat ha ka shadem jongi kamut bangi kerpad ya ublei ba undon ha ka jingmut jing perkhan ha ki ktin bangi kren bat ha ka donut jongi lingba ka ktin jong u kabangi yo sngo kabasan ngira ya kikti jongi habangi dua ya kajing dua ko kpa jongi kani kapin I bat kadai kadak jong kajing ya teli jongi bat ukris bat iwei ya iwei pan hakani kajing dua ngiro bat sngo ngo ya ublei ngimap iwei ya iwei bat ngidwai na kabenta kijing don kam babon bat na kabenta kajing im laway kabanrew ni ai khublei iwei ya iwei pat da kabangi phai shakalyang kadyang shakalyang kamon shadin da kabangi ong kajing suk happy kani kadak jong kajing suk kalong bangi pen pau iwei ya iwei pat ya kajing pen ya suk jong ukres yangi bat ublei da kajing yap bat kajing mi pat jong u kumta ngiro ngi pen pau bangi ya iet ya suk klembo shon ya no ro da ka bangi ya ngo ni ya khublei kti mar keliang kumta dei ban ya pej da ka ba pho samarkhe bat ya ai ka dak jong ga jing suk kani ka pen ken mau ya ki kentien jong u jisu habau ong kumta lada piwan terwa jing ai hakaduan bat piken mau ba upara jong pi udon persha ya pi to I no hangta hakmat kaduan yala ga jing ai bat tu lek ban ya suk shua bat la upara nangta sawan biang ban terwa yala ga jing ai ha ublei ya kanila shim naga gospel kat kum Matthews kalenong kabasan kadekot kaba arpulai bat arpusaw kabakhandai ngidem kho siu bat ngipendaj ya kikti jongi habang ngidwai kadai kadak jong kajing burom kajing mani bat kajing pan jing karpat ya kajing kerkhu kajing tem kho siu hakmat ka eucharist bakhoj kadai kadak jong kajing mani ya ublei bat kajing pen pau ya kajing bomlong jongi hakmat jong u tangkini ko hebarit ngilapoi shakabakut jong kajing batai jonga ya kidak kishin kibangile hakamas bakhoi kapang kabangan sa batai ya pi menta kasni kadai ki kam phala jong ka eucharist bakhoi shwabon poi shakani kum kajing pen kan mau ya pi ko hebarit ka eucharist bakhoi lani ka sacrament bakhoi tam gaduan
Ka Eucharist bakhoi lane ka sacrament bakhoi tam kaduan kalong ka jingknya jong ka met bat ka snam utrai Jisu ha ka ba la pen menta hangi da kilingdo habaki keno ya kini ki kentien namar kata ni kerpat ya me to pen khoi pen kentang ya kini ki jing terwa jongi da ka ba pha yo men sem jong me kum ka umjer halor jongi bakin tup kala long yani ka met bat kasnam jong utrai jongi u Jisu Christ. U Jisu la pen khamti ha ka balang jong u ya kani ka jingkan mau jong ka jingyap bat ka jingmi pa jong u ha ka ba ulabu ban pateng la pateng. Ka Eucharist ba khoi ru ka dei ka sacrament jong ka jingye ka dak jong ka jingya tali ka jingya le lang ki kam isen ei bat ka jing khawai paskha. Kan mau ko heb bait habangi pediang ya ka communion bakhoi kamut ngi pediang shisha ngi bam shisha ngi di shisha ya ka met bat ka snam jong trai jongi u Jisu Christ ban psa ya ka mensiem jongi dimintang in pet ya ka wei ka video ka badai shaphang ki kam phla jong ka Eucharist bakhoi ki balajia hakikato katni ki jaka.
Catholics believe that Jesus Christ is really, truly, and substantially present in the Eucharist. There are many stories of miracles throughout church history that seem to confirm this important teaching. It's important to note that no Catholic is required to believe any of these stories. Even if they have been investigated and approved by the Church does not give any absolute guarantee to their authenticity. Nor does the Catholic dogma of transubstantiation depend on the authenticity of these stories, it is based on scripture and tradition. Nonetheless, these stories are particularly noteworthy since you can still go see evidence of the miracles today. 1. Miracle of Lanciano 8th century. In the 8th century, a priest in Lanciano, Italy was experiencing doubts about the real presence of Jesus in the Eucharist. In the middle of saying Mass, he said the words of consecration, "This is my body, this is my blood," and saw the bread and wine transform into real human flesh and blood. The blood coagulated into 5 globules, later believed to be representative of the 5 wounds of Christ. Word of the miracle quickly spread, the local archbishop launched an investigation, and the church approved the miracle. The flesh is still preserved to this day. Professor of anatomy Odoardo Linoli conducted a scientific analysis of the flesh in 1971 and concluded that the flesh was cardiac tissue. The blood appeared to be fresh blood, as opposed to blood that was 1,200 years old, and there was no trace of preservatives. You can visit the miraculous flesh and blood in the Church of San Francesco in Lanciano, Italy. 2. The Corporal of Bulsana 13th century. A priest who had been experiencing doubts about transubstantiation was celebrating Mass in Orvieto, Italy. Soon after he had consecrated the Eucharist, the host started bleeding onto the corporal, a liturgical cloth, on the altar. The priest, the story goes, ran to the Pope who was visiting the town and confessed his sin of doubt. The corporal remains on display in the Cathedral of Orvieto. Some historians, however, question the veracity of the story, since the first accounts of it don't appear until about 100 years after the miracle supposedly took place. Nonetheless, the corporal remains an object of veneration. 3. The hosts of Siena, Italy 18th century. On August 14, 1730, while the Catholics of Siena, Italy were attending a special festival for the eve of the Feast of the Assumption, thieves entered the Church of St. Francis and stole a golden ciborium containing hundreds of consecrated hosts. 2 days later, someone noticed something white protruding from the offering box at another church in Siena. The priests opened the box and found the missing hosts inside, entangled in cobwebs and dirt. After being cleaned as much as possible, the hosts were placed in a new ciborium and taken back to the Church of St. Francis for prayers of reparation and veneration. Since the hosts were dirty, the priests decided not to consume them but let them simply deteriorate. Over the next few decades, everyone was amazed to see that the hosts did not deteriorate but actually appeared fresh. The hosts remain in this state today, 285 years later, and can still be seen in the now Basilica of St. Francis in Siena, Italy. 4. The Miracle of Churatakanam, India 21st century. On April 28, 2001, there was Eucharistic adoration at St. Mary's Parish in Churatakanam, India, when suddenly 3 red stains materialized on the host. The priest didn't know what to do and placed the host back into the tabernacle. A few days later he retrieved the host to examine it again, and the red stains had arranged themselves to look like the face of a man, Jesus. He quickly found a photographer and had pictures taken of the host. 5. The Eucharistic miracle of Santarim 13th century. A woman living in Santarim, Portugal in the 13th century was distressed that her husband was unfaithful to her, and she decided to consult a sorceress for help. The sorceress told her the price of her services was a consecrated host. She went to Mass at the Church of St. Stephen and received the Eucharist on her tongue, removed the Eucharist from her mouth, wrapped it in her veil, and headed to the door of the church. But before she got out, the host began to bleed. When she got home, she put the bloodied host in a trunk. That night, a miraculous light emanated from the trunk. She repented of what she had done and the next morning confessed to her priest. Her priest came and retrieved the host and took it back to the church. After an investigation and approval of the miracle, the church was renamed Church of the Holy Miracle, and the bloodied host remains on display to this day. God bless you and thank you for watching.
Kung mangilayo na kaniga video ba ukpu ubali ni uhos ulakla siya kamet bat kasnam basisha jong ujisu namar kajing artatin ya kajing don jong ujisu haka Eucharist bakoy. Tiling ba kini ki kampala ujisu ulapin pau ya kajing don basisha jong u haka Eucharist bakoy. Nagatakadaw ko hebarit tutip batungai skem ba haba pipdiang ya ka communion bakoy kadai ba pipdiang shisha ya ujisu ubaim hakadonud jongpi. Ku hebarit hangni nganetu ya pi syapang u Carlo Acutis balagurku ubadai kanuksa na kabenta jongi. Hakaba udon ya kajing iye kabakar pang ya ka Eucharist bakoy. Dai kajing iye jong u ya ka Eucharist bakoy kabala pelong ya u banlum ya ki kampala jong ka Eucharist bakoy kabala jia haman laki jaka. But ya kani ulashna kum ka project haka internet haka ba ka perthai baro ka way katip syapang kikam ke ba u Carlo Acutis ulale. Tikumta ya u Carlo Acutis latip kum unong yada jong ka internet. Timintangin page kindiat syapang ka video jong ka jingim jong u Carlo Acutis palagurku.
The website miracolieucharistici.org is available in 17 languages, among them Swahili, Urdu, and Vietnamese. Using photographs and historical descriptions, the exhibition presents parts of the Eucharistic miracles that have taken place in different countries and that the Church recognizes. It also explains the Eucharist's impact on the lives of different saints. This project has been presented in more than 500 parishes in Italy and more than 10,000 in other countries. Anyone interested in organizing the exhibition can download the 163 or so giant slides. It's the legacy of a young man who clearly understood that his path to heaven was the Eucharist.
Kum ban chupen kan mau ya pi ko heb baret syapang ka jingim jong u Carlo Acutis balagurku. Lakha ya u ha ka lai tarik ubnai basan usnem khat khandai phawai ha ka shnong Italy. Ulaklat haka khat tarik ubnai shipho arhajan rew. Bat lapin kentang yu kum ubala kerku haka handrew tarik ubnai khatway arhajar arpho.
But ya Carlo Acutis balakerku latip kum unong yada jong ka internet.
Of St. Francis of Assisi. And this past Saturday, the town was alive as people from near and far arrived to celebrate the beatification of Carlo Acutis. The celebrations of this beatification actually started a week ago when the tomb of Carlo was opened and put on display. It attracted many young people who were able to see for the first time a soon-to-be saint dressed in ordinary typical clothes of a boy his age. Carlo was 15 when he died of leukemia in 2006. He had incredibly strong faith and used his knowledge of computer programming to create a special website dedicated to the promotion of the Eucharist. The Mass was celebrated by Cardinal Vellini at St. Francis's Basilica and was watched on a live feed in different squares and churches around the town. Young pilgrims who were in attendance said Carlo is someone they can look up to as a role model.
Because he lived in the same world as we do, he is very close to us and the way we live, and I think it is very moving to have such an example of an exemplary life.
He gives me this hope of our time is just as good as any other to be holy.
As the sun set over Assisi, it marked the end of another step in the path to sainthood for Carlo Acutis. Colm Flynn, EWTN, News Nightly.
Timintang an pinkot da ka Jingong jong Carlo barakerku. Ka Eucharist bakhoj ka day ka lenti na ka benta jong nga shabeneng. Ku heb barit tu ai ba ka jing pediang jong pi ya ka communion bakhoj kan long kum kalenti na kabenta jung pi shabeneng batu ai ba kani ka jing pen khre jung pi ko heb baret ban priang yau jisu ha ka sen ba ka Banyngkong kan long ka por ka ba kerpang na kabenta ka jung pi ha ka ba ma pi pinyo ya ki jing ai e jong
Benta gila poi shakabakot jong kani ka Jinghikai nyam jungi ngidwai ba ublei unda unri sumari pi ya imei ipa jung pi ki ba haying hasam jong pi baro wat tie kumpama uhi na naga gospel kan ko Matthews kalanong ka ba arpupra kan khot ka ba arpo to tips kam ngan yai don ran kar bat phi baro desa shisien kumpama phi pitrang dik dik ban piang ya jisu ka do mo chupi ni duai ya phi mau blei un pha phi ya un siam jo ka jista ka jing snow ko ba ka jing sham phang klang ba phi pinang la shu shu ban pen kre kham pha ya la de ban piang ya jisu kublai shibun to nang koi nang khia long barawar ki ba ka me